Sup everyone, Adam here at Low and Slow Barbecue Supplies. Hey, on today's video we're going to tackle the holy grail of barbecue, which is brisket. What makes it even cooler is that it is a Snake River Farms brisket. Snake River Farms is from a farm in Idaho on the Boise River. They are kind of the creme de la creme of American Wagyu. So we're going to take you through the cook. I'm not going to wrap this brisket. We're going to do a purist traditional what they call a naked cook. So it's going to stay unwrapped the whole cook. What I'm going to do is I'm going to chuck it on some scales here. I'm going to weigh it, and then as I trim it, I've got a pot here. I'm going to put all the trimmings in, which I'm going to render down for lard. But just for a bit of fun, we're going to weigh how much fat I take off. Snake River Farms have a huge fat cap, which obviously we'll see once I take it out of here. Usually for a brisket this size, you kind of expect almost 2 kilos maybe, so we'll just see exactly how much comes off. Got the knife sharp. We'll get this unpacked. I'm super stoked. It's like 10:30 at night, so we're going to be cooking all through the night and through tomorrow. We'll be going kind of reasonably low and slow, probably about 250, so could be like a 15+ hour cook, but got hungry mouths to feed. So hey, I'll get this brisket unwrapped and we'll start chopping it up. But before I do that, let's weigh it. It's going to be way easier to weigh when it's still in the packaging. So chuck it on these scales here. So we've got the crazy view. So we're about 9.6 kilos. So that's officially the biggest brisket I've ever done. I've done some around the 8 kilo mark, untrimmed. So sweet, we'll get it opened up this time, and we'll take you through a pretty detailed look at what a trim looks like, or how I trim my briskets anyway. Sweet. So just a word to the wise, something I learned from Harry Sue, not only from watching his videos, but also from when he came over for the class that we hosted, is that when you're dealing with, he calls the purge, or the nasty junk, the packaging, whatever you want to call it, you definitely don't want to tip it down the sink, because there's all kinds of nasty junk in all of this stuff that obviously isn't an issue because we cook it, but if you're putting that down the drain, it's splashing everywhere, you know, you've got a chance of kind of contaminating your kitchen. So I've got my green prepaid rubbish bag here, so this is just going to go straight in the rubbish, and then all the paper towels, everything I use throughout the cook, I'm just going to keep straight in here so it's not going anywhere else in the kitchen. So we'll get this unwrapped, get this in the trash, and we'll start trimming. So just before I start chopping into this thing, I thought I'd just give you a little bit of a tour of it. If you haven't cooked a brisket, or haven't cooked a brisket certainly this big, it's just nice to stop and take a breath and have a look at what you're cooking first. So you can see it's crazy thick. It'd be about 150 mil, maybe even thicker here at the point end. You can see we've got a real nice thick flat, which is going to be great. That's the best part of about 50 mil, a couple of inches. Real thick decal, which is pretty common on the Snake River Farms. So a lot of fat that we're going to take out. See if I can flip it over. Lots and lots and lots of fat on the top here, huge fat cap. We're going to expose the point completely, so I'm going to take off pretty much all of that fat. We'll leave the fat on the flat and trim it up. So anyway, I'm going to get the camera set up and take you through a trim. Cool. So I had some people ask me if they, sorry, if I would go through a brisket trim. Now it would probably take me about 25-30 minutes if I'm full OCD to do this. So by all means, skip through this part of the video if you know what a brisket trimming kind of procedure is. One of the fundamentals of smoking meat is or the fundamental of smoking really meat is, apart from the smoke, is the airflow. So it's all about the air and the smoke moving over the meat. The more flow, the more smoke flavour. That's why offsets are so great. They've got a lot of air moving through. Obviously I'm burning wood, but they've got a huge amount of airflow. And so it's important when you're trimming any piece of meat, but certainly a brisket, that we want to make everything kind of as smooth and rounded as possible, just so that the air moves the best over it. So you can see we've got a kind of a very 90-degree angle here, which we need to round off, and that's just something to keep in mind whenever you're trimming, just to try and keep things smooth and round. As I mentioned, we are going to expose all of the point. There's just so much fat and marbling in the meat that the point doesn't need to be protected, and obviously it stops us getting rub down onto the point. So I mean, I'm just going to start cutting. You can really cut anywhere on this thing here, and sometimes it is a little bit of not knowing where to start, but you kind of just have to get going. You can see I went kind of deep there, but there's a little bit of there'll be a technical word for it, that kind of pokes up. So I'm just getting that smooth. So I'm not stressed about exposing or losing a tiny bit of meat there. Get my pot going. $193 grams so far. I think I've said in most of my videos, but sharp knife, super important. You want to be putting the least amount of pressure as possible on your cuts, and that's purely just a safety thing. So, oof, she is a big boy. Don't think that made sense. He's a big boy. By all means, leave a comment on how you like to trim brisket. You can see we got just a huge amount of fat here. It has to come off. Don't know if the camera picking that up well, but that's almost 10 centimetre thick and still didn't even get down to the meat. So we got an awful lot of trimming to do. For those of you that are wondering, we're up to half a kilo of trimming already. This I took this straight out of the refrigerator. When you're trimming any meat, it's way easier to do when it's cold, but this Wagyu fat does soften up real quick. The stuff that I'm holding on to is already starting to soften up and melt with my body heat, so you do want to try and move quickly. The softer it gets, the harder it is to trim, and the more important your knife sharpness is as it gets kind of stickier and harder to work with. So don't be afraid to, you can see I've got the knife sharpener here, don't be afraid to get that out numerous times throughout the trim if you feel like you're having to put a bit too much pressure on. Now I do the same, the concept of the trim, I do the same for virtually any brisket I'm cooking, even a grass-fed. Still like to expose the point completely. almost up to a kilo of trim. Now when we get to it, the part that I usually don't get quite so ruthless on on the grass feeds is trimming out heaps of the decal, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Short of eating, the trimming is probably my favourite part of the process. I enjoy the knife work, and I'm a little bit OCD, so I just like being able to try and get as much of this fat as possible. It's a bit like mowing a lawn or something. I'm sure barbers would feel the same. Giving haircuts, you know, you want to have it perfect or uniform. I probably will skip some of this process on this video, otherwise it is going to drag on super long, but maybe get this top part done. Actually, I will do a bit of a fast forward and we'll come back with the top side all done, and then I'll show you what I'm doing on the bottom. Okay, so we're just nearing the finishing stages. This point actually takes up most of the brisket, which makes the trim on this side a little bit longer, but also kind of a little bit easier because I'm having to kind of guess on that 1/4 inch. So you can see the edge of the point, well, the point kind of stops here, and it's probably going to go kind of across somewhere like that. So just keep working, exposing more of this point meat. We're up to almost 1.9 kilos of fat trimmed off thus far. You can see I've rounded off this corner here, rounded off that corner there. Excuse me. I'll just still keep trimming bits off. For the sake of the video, I might just flip it over so you can see what we're going to do on the back side, and then I'll come back and finish this top side off, because there's just so much fat, and there's only so many times you want to see me cutting fat. So the back side is a lot simpler. You know, we're just trying to clean up all these little bits of fat. Obviously they would, you know, melt and render down, but they would take the seasoning with them. So the more we get off at this part of the process, the better the seasoning will be. As you'll have seen in other videos, if you can get your hand underneath the brisket, you can kind of promote the bit you're trying to trim off at the top, and that will make it a lot easier. You definitely don't want to dig any great big channels. You can see here the fat's kind of in a channel, and some of these other spots you don't want to really go digging for it. So just watch your knife angle, make sure it's really shallow, not digging down, keep it flat, or even depending on which part you're trimming, you might even keep it on a bit of an up angle just to make sure you're not taking too much meat. Get that out of the way. What I did want to show you is, and hopefully this is all coming through, we've got this big seam of fat called the decal, which separates the point and the flat, and so this is a flat muscle underneath. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in there and dig out it on both sides, and that is all about exposing more of that point meat. See, big super thick hard piece won't render down at all and is not going to be good eating whatsoever. don't know if that shows up, but you can see this kind of discoloured meat. That happens as part of the, it's kind of like a steam process that it goes through. Don't know all the specifics, I'm not a butcher, but every now and then a little bit of the outside of the meat will have this, it's almost even been slightly cooked, I guess is what it is. And so basically just trim that off, sort of prog. It's pretty common. So what I'm going to do is basically going to trim all of this out quite a ways back, if you can imagine, through the slot here. Obviously I don't want to separate them completely, so I'll leave enough there that it still holds its integrity. But basically the point that's running underneath here, we want to expose the meat on this top side, so this flap will kind of open up to an extent, and there's going to be a bunch of point meat that we want to get seasoning on under here. At the moment it's just all covered up, and we've only got access via the other side, which we've already trimmed. I'll just show you there, you can see the marbling in the point. Absolutely crazy. So it's going to be some pretty good eating. Hopefully the Joker doing the cooking knows what he's up to. I have ruined these before, just not knowing what I was doing, learning. So even though you might start with a really nice piece of meat, you can still undercook it, especially with brisket. That's pretty easy to do, and it still be tough, even though there's so much marbling. And obviously you can, overcook it, which isn't the end of the world, but it does tend to kind of fall apart, and the texture isn't so appealing. So we're almost up to 2.5 kilos of trimming. I will weigh this at the end just to show you the difference. This is where it starts getting a bit dicey, just kind of start. We can kind of see the point is here, so we can kind of cut in and just start taking big pieces out. Again, you can see super thick. That's not going to help. Now the downside of this trim method is that you'll see on videos when people are showing off their brisket, they'll throw it down on the table and the brisket will wobble, and that wobble is all this fat through here jiggling, and so you've got the two pieces of the brisket moving, and so by cutting all of this out we kind of lose a lot of that wobble effect. So if you are cooking for the sole purpose of getting likes and Instagram followers, then you may want to avoid the style of trim. Still word to the wise, but if you want to get lots of seasoning on your meat, thoroughly recommend it. Hopefully this is showing on the video here. I'll spin this around. You can see I'm just kind of cutting through the seam of meat between the point and the flat. So we're going to take all this off, and I'll probably trim up this underside too, and we're going to go back a fair ways, probably back to maybe about here. So I'm just going to keep doing that, and then that'll more or less be the end of the trim, and then I'll kind of take you on a bit of a tour of the finished process, finished product, and just kind of recap how we did it. If you've got any questions, by all means leave a comment, and I'll get to those. Get to those, and so that you're sussed when you're going to do your own brisket trim. Okay, so fast forward about 15 minutes, and this is the end result, so I'll just talk you through it. So all of the meat going this way is the point, and I've trimmed it right back until the flat kind of peaks up from underneath, so the flat's under here. So this is the line where the point finishes. So I've exposed all of the point and left that kind of classic 1/4 inch or so fat on top of the flat. If I flip it over here, see what we're working with on the back side. So we've got the flat. You can see they're almost not quite perpendicular. We've got the point going this way, and then the flat's kind of, it's not quite 90 degrees, but maybe it's on 30 degrees or 60, whichever way around it would be. So you can see I finished trimming the point back. Now if this was a comp trim, a lot of the comp guys either would separate these two all together, or at least they would cut this flap off to make sure that this was all fully exposed. With this flap over here, it'll stop smoke getting in there. Obviously no bark will set because it'll be sitting on top, but that feels like an awful lot of meat to chop off unnecessarily. So that is how I trim my briskets, more or less. You can see we've kind of rounded things off and tried to keep everything smooth. So what I'm going to do now, I don't know if you can see my hands, this Wagyu fat just melts, so we probably don't even really need to worry about any kind of smear or binder. So I'm just going to wash my hands and get ready to rub this down. Okay, so we'll talk through what we're doing for seasoning. Ground celery seed, again another Harry special, real light base coat. We've got mostly this is Cosmo SPG. I had a little bit of Heath Rowe's garlic jalapeno rub, and I think maybe a little bit of his everyday rub, so that's kind of just a bit of a combination of a few SPG APs all thrown together. And then we're gonna dust over the top with grill your ass off gunpowder, which is a nice charcoal rub, which we'll just add for a little bit of colour and a flavour on the top. So reasonably traditional as far as the seasoning goes. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time showing you the whole process. I'm sure you've all seen people put seasoning on meat. I like to go reasonably high up. I'll try and film this. The higher you go, the better chance you have of getting a nice even coat, and you've got better control over where it's going. So the celery is a really light coat, and if you haven't heard it before, rubs, you don't ever really rub a rub. Always just pat it down. You don't want to upset the consistency or the distribution of the rub. I will go back through afterwards and add rub under here, but I can't do that and hold the camera. You can see this Cosmo SPG is reasonably coarse, which is nice. It'll help us with a nice bark. Again, I will do all the sides, but I can't do the sides and hold the camera. So, and then just to show you what I do with this gunpowder over the top. This one I'm pretty careful with, but it's really just a light dusting, just for that colour. It does have some salt and pepper and bits and pieces in it, but it just does add something to the bark, especially from an appearance point of view. Especially important if you're doing a wrap cook. Obviously we'll have no issues getting great bark unwrapped. I know this because I did this a week or so ago, which I think I mentioned, but anyway, so that's how I do it. I'm going to go through, finish up to under here, do the sides, obviously flip it back around, and then we will let that set, let the rub do its thing, get the smoker fired up in the meantime. So yeah, we'll come back and check all that out. Okay, so we're all rubbed down. Thought I'd show you the trimming. So 3.6 kilos, which is over a third of the brisket. A little bit scary, it's just the way it is. So I'm going to chuck this pot on the stove and get that simmering away. I'll show you what the end result looks like, a little bit like a proper cooking show. So here's some stuff I did a few weeks ago, the last time I cooked one of these. So I got from a much smaller brisket, I think it was a 6 kilo brisket, I got 2 full jars. So I probably got at least 50% more again of fat. So we'll just keep storing this stuff up. Put What else have I got in here that's interesting? Made my own hot sauce. Smoked a bunch of stuff, so I got a video recipe of doing that sometime. And just, if you're a fan of beer, old Joe at Liberty has Citra Brew. It's just about as good as it gets anywhere in the world. So just a plug for Joe and the good guys and girls up there. So right, we'll let this rub do its thing. I've got the smoker on, so once that is up to temp, we'll chuck the meat on. We'll have a bit of a chat about the cook, and then I'm going to go to bed. It's about midnight, so I'll grab a few hours sleep. We'll get up, check how things are going. Should be ready to start spritzing in a few hours. That bark will be starting to form, and we'll go from there. One thing that I did want to mention, which is super important and going to be much easier to simulate in here, where we've got some light. When you're cooking meat, if you've got juices pooling on the meat anywhere, the bark cannot set. It's impossible. And so you can see with this brisket here, we've got a contour, and of course juice is going to pool right in that pocket there. So what I'm going to do, again, another Harry Sue trick, is I'm going to put a block under here, and if I can simulate it, that's going to create a high point in the middle, and basically all of the juice is going to run off both sides, or the vast majority of it, which is going to really help with bark preservation and bark formation. I don't know if you can tell, but things are starting to glisten up, so that's good. So yeah, I'm going to get cleaned up. Another thing I was going to mention, the old fat side up, fat side down. You could see when we finished the trim, we really had stuff all fat anyway, which is, I've never had a brisket where the point is so long in terms of its overlap, and maybe there was something to do with how this one was trimmed as well. But really the fat is there to protect the meat. There's no magic, spin it around. There's no magic that happens where the fat magically melts into the meat and becomes one with the meat. The fat is there in our scenario, or our context, to protect the meat from the heat source. So in a pellet smoker, which is what we're using for this cook, just because I'm going overnight and I've got a busy day tomorrow and I don't have to be up every so often worrying about the temps and so on. The heat source on a pellet smoker is from the bottom, and not super directional, but is directional from the bottom. So what little bit of fat we will have down. If you're cooking in an offset where the heat is kind of top down, then you'd be fat side up. And again, like if you're in a barrel or something like that where the heat is very much at the bottom, you probably should go fat side down. There's a lot of debate on that, but I would argue every time that wherever your heat's coming from, you want the fat pointing in that direction. So that's how I'm doing it, and how I would recommend that you do it too. Okay, got the brisket on. Obviously I couldn't film and do that, needed 3 hands really. I've got a upper rack fitted in my Green Mountain Grills Jim Bowie, which just obviously gives me a ton more space for cooking, but lets me keep stuff up off the lower rack where we've kind of got more directional heat there. You can see I've got the block there and created, you can see we've got rid of that pocket. Obviously we've got a little bit of one there, but we've done a pretty good job I think, and got the water steaming away. We probably will have a little bit of moisture form there, so I might see if I can get another block just to put underneath that. But otherwise we'll just get this shut. We're good to go. It's about 12:45. Go to bed. I'll probably wake up at maybe 5ish and make sure nothing crazy is going on. Get some spritzing action happening. Top up the pellets and go back to bed until the kids wake up. So hey, thanks for sticking with us this far. Obviously the brisket cook, the prep is a real big chunk of it, and after that really it's just letting it cook and watching it do its thing, especially seeing as we're not wrapping. Yeah, we've got a pretty simple process from here on in, so we'll just check back in every few hours and see how we're going through to the finish. Yeah, get some sleep. I'm going to as well, and we'll catch you in the morning. Cheers. Morning everyone, so 6 o'clock, got a bit of sleep. Let's have a look what we got going here. Oh yeah, it looks like a brisket. It's looking good. Got a little spot there where it's pulling. Other than that, we're looking pretty good. We'll give it a light spritz. These are way easier than those little spray bottles. They're done right the first time with the big boy there. So I'm going to head back to bed. It's looking good. Come back in a couple of hours and check our progress, give it another spritz, and just have a look at the IT and just see where we're at. So yeah, back to bed for a little bit, which will be good. Sweet. A couple of hours later, it's about 8 o'clock. We'll check it out, see how we're going. Colour is looking pretty good. It's getting a little bit crusty on the end here. You can see we've got that spot where the juice is pulling. I guess in retrospect I should have tried to get a little bit of a block under that end as well, but anyway, we'll just keep on rolling. I've got my pure Q here. I'm just going to do a little bit of a probe just for interest's sake, see where we're at. Kind of further along than I expected in terms of the temp. Let's have a look at the point here. Oof. So I did not expect to see the point at that temp already. That's pretty much, just in terms of the feel, pretty much done. Don't know if you can see how easy that's going in. So I might have to pull this off because the flat's got ages to go, hours, and the point is pretty much done, and if that stays on here for another 4 or 5 hours, it's just going to get obliterated. So that's interesting. I haven't had that happen quite like that before, so I am going to whip this off. I'm going to remove the point and wrap that up and keep it nice and warm, and then we'll just keep rolling with the flat until it's done. Put the brisket back inside. Yeah, you can see how spongy it is. This is just a real great example of why they say every bit of meat's different, and you just can't cook to a specific time or temp, and you have to be willing to adjust on the fly. If this stayed on there for as long as we need for the flat to get done, this would just kind of cook to oblivion. So I'm just going to run my knife, because I've already separated so much of the flat and the point, just going to run my knife through to separate them. I can't do that and hold the camera, so I'm going to do that and then get the flat back on and get the point wrapped up with some foil and get that resting. Flat is now back on, minus the point, and just going to give it a spritz. Want to keep that outside moist and stop it getting too crusty. I'll just keep doing that every 45 minutes or so. And yeah, here's hoping the flat takes quite a long time to cook, because dinner is not for ages, and while you can rest obviously a brisket for a few hours, it'd be good if I didn't have to rest it for most of the day, but I think we probably got 4 or 5 hours left just based on what that internal temp was when I probed it in the previous section of the video. So we'll just keep rolling. I'm going to attend to the point and show you what I'm going to do with that now that that is all wrapped up. Got the point ready to wrap up. Another trick I learned when Harry was over was about rehydrating the brisket. Now, normally he would do this at the wrapping stage, which obviously would be normally mid-cook, not just kind of the resting stage, but rehydrating the brisket is something he does. And so just gonna, he uses stock, just pour a little bit of stock over here. You'll see that most of it is soaking back in, and of course this just helps with moisture. This part of the point here especially took a bit of a hammering for whatever reason, and it's quite crusty, so that might just kind of help with the crust too. Sweet. So I'll get that wrapped up now in the tin foil and wrap it in a towel, chuck it in the chili bin, and let it do its thing. Probably end up eating it for lunch because I can't rest it all day, but I'll show you before we slice it up, or as we slice it up. Another couple hours down, it's coming on 10 o'clock. So I snuck some shorties in there too, because I don't think there's going to be enough meat for everyone for dinner, seeing as the point won't obviously last resting a whole day. So we'll just keep spritzing this. Next time I check it, I will probe it. Still, I'm feeling pretty good in some spots. Some Silver Fern Farms reserve grade shorties that I got on special. Got 20 kilos of them, which was nice. So we'll just keep rolling along here and check back in at about 12 o'clock, and I'm guessing we'll probably be pretty close to done, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so I said we were going to render down all of the trimmings for essentially lards, that it ends up being. You can use it for cooking. So we've got a pretty good sized pot here, and I'm going to transfer all of this fat into a smaller pot, which will leave us with all of the liquid, which I'll then transfer into some jars. Let it cool, it'll kind of solidify like I showed you earlier, and then we can use that for cooking. If you don't have a mincer but you don't want to waste all of your trimmings, that's a real good way of getting all the yield you can possibly out of your brisket, whether it's a Wagyu one or even just a grass-fed. So I'll do that. Happy days. Okay, another couple of hours later, it's about smack bang on 12 o'clock. Still looking good. Just give it a temp, starting to get there, but probing pretty good there. You can see the resistance that I'm pulling, so still got a ways to go. Now the last time I did a full naked cook, I was kind of put off by the fact that you get more of a crust, and so there's a feeling like it doesn't probe easy, when in fact it's the crust that's kind of holding it back. And so it's really tricky to gauge if it's truly done. But there's just a few parts, especially here where it's a bit thicker, where it still doesn't feel quite right. So I think we probably need maybe another half hour, 45 minutes, maybe a bit longer. We'll just give it another spritz. These shorties down here, which will give you a sneak peek of, looking good. Give it a bit of a spritz too. So we'll come back in about 30 minutes, see how we're doing. Okay, so I've pulled the point out of the oven. I've had it warming in there. Gonna have that for lunch. You can see all that stock more or less got absorbed in, which is great. There's not a big puddle of it sitting in the bottom here. So going to attempt to transfer this over. Actually, I'm going to put the phone down for a sec. Bear with me. Get some of this goodness on the top there. Get that out of the way. Sorry. Right. So, is this thing not focusing anymore? What's going on? There we go, back in action. So I'm going to give this a bit of a chop. You can see the grain running this way. So we want to chop this way. It's going to be hard to do without using the tripod, but I'll just take a cut. Let's have a look at it. There we go. Super juicy. And let's take a bite. Pretty good. The flavour is really good. A bit crusty right on the end. I'm not sure if the smoke was kind of hotter on that corner or that, excuse me, edge the point was on. But really good flavour. A little bit more obviously than I'd be used to on the pellet grill, just because it hasn't been wrapped. Still not comparable to something like my Smoky Mountain or Offset, but still pretty good. So definitely we haven't lost anything not wrapping it, that I can tell. Maybe other than it being a little bit crustier on the outside than I would normally enjoy. Sorry, cocked up there. So yeah, the outside is a little bit crustier than I would have liked, although I kind of think that's maybe a temp issue rather than a no wrap issue. But anyway, it is what it is. It's still super enjoyable. So I'm going to get this cubed up, or sliced up perhaps, and yeah, we're going to have that for lunch right about now. We'll be just about ready to take the flat off as soon as we're finished eating, I think. Okay, I think will be the last test here. Get the pure Q. Oh yeah, much easier than considering we've got a fairly crusty crust. That's a pretty good result here. Definitely feels a little bit, mind you, right through the middle there feels. Okay, so check this one more time. I'm just checking for, I'm not worried about the IT. It's definitely cooked. Just checking for probes, definitely feeling better everywhere. Looks like it's a little bit crustier down there, and when I probe here you can see the resistance, but when I go on through the side it's just like butter, so I think that crust is a bit deceiving, which I think I mentioned earlier. So we'll get this off. While we're here we'll just get a reading on these shorties. What do we got here? 175, so they got a ways to go. We'll give them a little bit of a spritz. Cool, so I'll get this off, we'll get it wrapped up. Usual story, chuck it in the chili bin, maybe or the oven, whatever, and it's finished a bunch earlier than I thought, but we'll be able to hold it over till dinner, and we're going to add the short ribs in, so should be good eating. Okay, so I've got a couple of sheets of foil here, and just like I did with the point, as carefully as possible, it's going to rehydrate this. Got, again, a bit like the point, we've got some quite crusty areas. I think it seems like the temp I think it cooked at was kind of hotter than I had anticipated or set, so I might have stuffed up something with it when I chuck the heat baffle in. But anyway, I'll get this all wrapped up. It's going to absorb all that moisture, which will help, and we'll come back here in a few hours when it's time to eat it to see how it looks. Amazing bark, looks super good. Apart from that one little spot there, which we've seen throughout the cook. But yeah, visually looks pretty good. Here's hoping it eats just as well. Okay, so fast forward 5 or 6 hours, I've had this resting in the oven. You can see we've got a pretty good hang there, not disappointed with that. Pulls nice and easy. Get a bit of a taste. Pretty good. Great flavour, real nice and beefy. The rubs there just doing its thing. Not super moist. Obviously the flat's never quite like the point. I would have liked this just a little bit juicier, but we've got a real, you can see we've got real nice fat render here, so that's melting in the mouth. overall pretty happy. Sorry, I had to finish up that early. One of the kids was just about to come in. So just in summary, definitely happy with the outcome. No, it's not as good as wrapping. We already knew that. But I wanted to try this with a real quality piece of meat. Great eating, but definitely not as good as wrapping. I'd like to try this one more time injecting. I meant to inject this one and forgot to bring my injection from work home, which was a bit of a fail. So I've got a few more of these briskets in the freezer and I will give it a go injecting one. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed watching. Again, if you've got any comments or questions, let me hear them. Otherwise, we'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.